Hi, it's not every day that you have a Nobel Laureate here in the lab. Barry Marshall, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, how you going, Dave?
Good,
I'm shaking left-handed
yeah.
because I injured my
Buggered your
hand.
hand,
Yeah, that's right, and I'll tell you about
tragic
that later.
accident.
It's making me cry.
Anyway, Barry is not only a total electronics nerd and hobbyist and vintage HP nut, as well as a vintage tech nut. We've been talking all about Tektronix scopes and HP gear and all sorts of stuff. But you're we could talk about that until the cows come home.
I do all the medical things. So I ended up being an infectious disease specialist and a gastroenterologist because I discovered that germ in the stomach which causes ulcers, which is called Helicobacter pylori.
Gesundheit.
And its initials are HP.
Oh, brilliant.
So it annoys me. I could never get the website hp.com because HP, so some American company already had it.
This upstart company beat you to it.
Yeah. So I thought I'd come along and teach you, Dave, a bit about human health, about the stomach, because I know you're electronics engineers. You got nothing, nothing about flesh and blood, do you?
Absolutely nothing. So you won the 2005?
Yeah, 2005 Nobel Prize for Medicine.
For medicine?
And my partner there was Dr. Robin Warren, who's a pathologist.
Right.
And he had been looking for cancer in stomach biopsies, and he saw these bacteria. And although he had seen the bacteria in a few people, like about 20 people, he didn't know how they could survive in the stomach. The stomach's got a lot of acid in it, it kills bacteria. And he didn't know whether these bacteria were causing any kind of disease. So I turned up one day looking for a research project, like impromptu. He told me all about them, and I said, well, that is really interesting. How could bacteria be living in the stomach?
Yes.
And they've never been reported in the medical books, because all the medical books say bacteria cannot live in acid.
Got it.
So, what a great, interesting research project that would be.
Fantastic.
And so off we went, and so that started off in 1981, and over the next 2 or 3 years, we worked out that these bacteria caused ulcers.
Fantastic.
Not stress.
Not stress. There you go, folks. The Nobel Laureate says ulcers are not caused by stress.
Yes.
And so that was the prevailing theory for
100 years or more.
Right.
And because what I found out, this is secret stuff your doctor will never tell you. When he or she doesn't know what's wrong with you, they'll blame it on stress. So if ever they say, Dave, this is caused by stress, that means
YouTube job's too stressful.
That really means
we
don't know what's wrong with you, but we won't admit it. But it probably also means that I ran a bunch of tests on you and everything came up normal. So in other words, you might say, well, you haven't really got a diagnosis. However, you've got a diagnosis that nothing bad is going on, and that is good, because that means probably you're going to get better and it's probably just a virus or something. However, people with ulcers used to have it all their life. They'd vomit up blood, they could die from it. A lot of famous people had it. And when we studied these bacteria a bit more, we found out that more than half the people in the world were infected, and still are. So in Australia, in fact, it's been decreasing, and it's hard to find people with ulcers nowadays. It used to be very common, like in your parents' generation, my parents. And nowadays, probably about 20%, probably 10% of Australians still have it. Anybody who's migrated from a developing country, like the Middle East, Asia, China, Africa, South America, that more than half the population in those countries have still got it.
Wow.
And they still get a lot of ulcers, and in China they get a lot of stomach cancer. So the problem is, if you have a germ irritating your body for your whole life, because you catch it when you're 2 or 3 years old from your mother, and then after 30 or 40 or 50 years, it can lead to some other things. But anyway, that's enough medicine.
Right. Hang on. No. You're talking about Pepto-Bismol. What's it? We don't have it here. We don't call it that here.
So anyway, one of the Dave and I were talking about how.
We should have recorded the whole conversation before. It was fascinating. We've been talking about this for.
We'll have a couple of beers one night.
Right,
We'll do it properly over a few beers. That would be better. So we're talking about when I was a kid, we used to live in the rubbish tip in a shoebox. And you would say, my God, you guys had a shoebox? It was one of those kinds of conversations. But and the election's coming up, of course.
Right, of course.
And so after Bob Hawke came in, they floated the Australian currency.
They did.
I was a penniless hobbyist.
Yep.
I was a doctor, luckily.
Right, okay.
But, with a family and everything, I still had no dough. And the Australian interest rate went up to 16%.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
It was very, very painful. And so, so I was doing my research. And one of the reasons that people didn't believe it was important was because so many people had it. It must be just harmless, right? So that was one thing. But one of the things that I discovered was there's this medicine around the world called Pepto-Bismol.
Right.
Now, in America, and the best one was Tom Cruise in that movie Rain Man.
Rain Man.
He's trying to sell all those Corvettes.
Yep.
And he can't sell them. They're locked up in the harbour, quarantine or something. And you'll see him go to the cupboard and he drinks this pink medicine. Well, I found out that this stuff, Pepto-Bismol, they were selling buckets of it in America and a lot of other countries, England. And the thing that was in it, they thought it was some kind of antacid which coated the stomach because people used to take it and they sell it in the supermarket.
And they'd feel better. It kind of worked,
yeah,
right?
it kind of did work, surprisingly. Yeah. So the people who couldn't afford to have health insurance or anything they'd talk to their mates. They say, go down the supermarket, the Farmore, and get some Pepto-Bismol and I just chug along it. And so people in America were taking the stuff, and I worked out that it contained bismuth, which is a heavy metal.
Yeah, right.
It's in the same column of the table of elements as arsenic, phosphorus, maybe, all down that column.
Yep.
The heaviest metal, non-radioactive element actually is bismuth. So, arsenic was used to treat syphilis.
Right, okay.
Mercury, treating syphilis, and people used to get a black line on their teeth. Those old... Victorian guys. Okay. So before we had antibiotics, people knew, or some people knew, that you could take heavy metals and we would dose you with it until you just about died, at which point we'd stop.
Right.
And you could be cured of your syphilis, you see. So all the rich kings and princes and everything, they had these black lines around their gums from the heavy metals. And I remembered the bismuth killed bacteria. And so I tested it on our stomach bacteria, and lo and behold, they got killed.
Okay, so you guessed that there was there was bacteria in the stomach, even though everyone said there wasn't.
Yeah, so Dr. Warren and I, we knew they were there because we could sample people, and we grew them in the lab and tested antibiotics and everything. But the thing that rocketed me off, if you like, into a bit of an interesting career was I discovered that this over-the-counter medicine in America called Pepto-Bismol, they sell hundreds of millions of dollars worth of it, was actually killing the bacteria. Wow. So the people in the community who were taking this stuff and had it in their bathroom cupboard were chronically infected with the bacteria. And I found out if you add a simple antibiotic to it, you can kill about 70% of it. And in 2 weeks, you cure lots of people.
Got it permanently.
Permanent? Right, so if you get rid of the germ, your ulcer's just totally cured.
Right.
End of story. So with the 16% interest on my mortgage, I was lucky to license a patent to this company in the US, and they said, Barry, we need to tell America about this because there's a lot of dough in it. It could be ulcer treatment.
Yep.
And so I then had research funding at the University of Virginia. There was a nice guy there called Richard McKellum from Brisbane, but he was a professor there. He hired me over. And so for 5 years we did the research funding, and after that I worked on this thing. It got lots of publicity, and it took about 10 years to convince regular
community
after
it was published.
And then we had to figure out a good treatment. So we got a good treatment. We got some medical tests. So nowadays, if you go to your GP, you say, my dad used to have ulcers and now I think I'm getting one. Right. A story like that. He might do a blood test on you, but probably do a breath test. Which is a chemical test.
You can detect it from the breath.
Well, you have to take an isotope with urea in it, which is split, and urea is just ammonia and carbon dioxide joined together. Right. It's a waste product in your body. It comes out in your urine. Of course, but it's in your stomach fluids and your saliva, and the germ splits that into CO2 and ammonia, and the CO2 that then comes out in your breath in about 10 minutes. So one of the things that I eventually did was invent that test, and so nowadays all over Australia, any of the labs your GP goes, you go down the lab, you swallow this capsule, wait 10 minutes, blow up a balloon, send it off to the lab, and then they said, whoa, you've got a score of 3,000 or something. And then the beautiful thing is when you take the antibiotic treatment, a month later they check you again and say, you've now got a score of 3. So you go from this mega level down to practically 0 on this isotope test, and that's secure.
Brilliant.
And you didn't have to have a scope down, and you didn't have to worry about the fact that you were hopeless and under stress and incompetent and everything. You're still that. But your ulcer is gone, so now you can cope.
Is there still that myth that stress causes ulcers and all that? Is that so persistent that you can't get rid of it?
It kind of is, but part of it is this lying, this con job that doctors have. And I don't know, did we get this on tape before? So whenever your doctor can't figure out what's wrong with you, he says it's caused by stress. Exactly. So kids, I might give a talk to, say, high school students, and they say, or uni students, they say, well, is there anything that we could do to win a Nobel Prize? And I say, well, next time you go to the doctor and he says something's caused by stress, you think, if I could find the real cause, I'd probably win the Nobel Prize, according to Barry Marshall.
Interesting. Wow.
So what can you think of that's caused by stress?
YouTube burnouts caused by stress.
But headaches.
All right.
Like usually, if you got a headache, I'd say 90% of the time it's going to be postural. You're sitting in front of a desk and you're fiddling around, and you're sort of tracing some horrible little signal across an instrument or something, you know. And it's so interesting. You do it for 5 hours straight,
and you don't realise you're
So stress or posture. Well, we say stress, but it's usually posture or something like that.
Right.
And some people get migraines. And I used to get them. I grew out of it.
Yeah.
I'm not intelligent enough anymore, but usually smarter people get migraines.
Right. I've never had a migraine in my life, so obviously that tells you a lot.
If I get a headache, it's a hangover, but I don't drink much anymore. So like headaches.
Yep.
No one. In any individual, we might have a kind of a diagnosis. We can't cure you because we don't really understand the fundamental cause of a headache.
Got it.
Where does it come from?
Right, interesting.
Is it chemical in your blood or does it come from your muscles? So if ever you read a medical book and there's a chapter on something, like with 100 pages in the chapter, and they have 20 causes of something, that means they didn't really know the real cause.
Right.
So with ulcers, it used to have 114 pages in the medical book.
Really?
And there would be a list of about 20 causes of duodenal or stomach ulcers.
Wow! And it turns
now
out
there's
there was
2.
Well, why is it
90% of them around the world would be the germ.
Right.
And the other 10% people take aspirin or arthritis medicine or something like that.
Got it.
And it's not alcohol.
Right.
So I always get asked, Dr. Marshall, can whiskey cause ulcers? I say no.
No, it's good.
Actually, it does poison the bacteria a little bit.
Right. Okay. Oh, it helps. There you go. Oh, that'll be on Facebook tomorrow.
So the things that so I'm a hobbyist.
Yes, you are.
And I was telling you that I started building S-100 computers after doing some. Actually, I got a scholarship to do electronic engineering out of high school, but decided that I'd do medicine and do electronics as a hobby because in 1970. In 1968 is when I did my 1969, actually 50 years ago this year. You know, Man on the Moon.
Yes, absolutely.
So that was my first year in uni, and I got a scholarship. I can't remember how I got a scholarship. Maybe I didn't have one, but I thought.
Right.
But, you know, electronics in those days was so expensive. A transistor would cost you like a week's wages, you know.
Seriously.
So I thought, if I'm a doctor, I'd have enough money to do electronics as a hobby.
You can afford the hobby.
So finally I got there.
That's great. That is brilliant.
And so I did some night school of circuit theory, and then I did a summer school of microcontrollers. Lift
they were
controllers
a thing back then?
Yeah. That was like the Intel.
Oh, okay.
You're sitting here between. That's my first computer, Dave.
That is your first computer.
It cost me $350.
And apparently, I outbid him on this. We were both bidding, and I had no idea I was bidding against a Nobel Laureate for the for this.
Dave, I think I'm serious now. After we finish this, I'm going to kill you and steal that.
As long as you publish the content, that's all right.
Anyway, Dave's going to do a video on that for me.
Yeah.
But
Should I assemble it? Or look, it's sealed. It's like
new in box.
It's new in box.
Let me smell it.
It's new in box.
Smells a bit mouldy.
It's that cardboardy smell, yeah, but it's like a shrink.
Anyway,
shrink
it was
wrapped.
so beautiful, and my poor wife. I mean, the children were starving for a few weeks after I bought that.
Right.
But then a mate wanted to control his sprinklers. The well used to run dry all the time.
Right.
So he said, I need my sprinklers to be smart, so they cycle through. When they run out of water, they stop until the well charges up again, and then they'll start up again where they left off, not at the beginning. So I built a sprinkler controller, machine coded it.
Nice.
Real-time clock.
Well, you had to. There was no compiler for this.
That's right. It was it had a clock.
Yep.
And a sprinkler controller written in machine code in 2K of RAM, which is not bad.
That's a lot for it, but that's a lot for a sprinkler controller, isn't it? I think you're a bit loosey-goosey with your code there.
Oh, yeah, probably. It wasn't documented very well either.
Right.
Anyway, so he was happy with that, and he paid me $250 or something, and I then fed that into an S-100 computer.
Yep.
So I was only one of 2 doctors at Royal Perth Hospital that knew what a computer was. The other bloke he was a surgeon. His name was Val, and he had an Apple.
Right.
They just come out, and I was like, colour.
Apple 2 or 1? Oh, it would
Apple
be
2.
2.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but he was measuring blood flow and stuff like that in intensive care. But I managed my waiting list. You know, there were hundreds of people with ulcers trying to get my new treatment with antibiotics. And so I had an answering machine. I had a push-button memory phone I got from Tandy.
Yep.
And I had this S-100 computer, and then I got a drug company bloke, one of my sponsors eventually, to give me a copy of D-Base 2. So nice. I was then writing, I had a database with D-Base, and I was putting all kinds of information in there. And so all of a sudden I had 500 patients being managed by this system, which I put together, CPM.
Yep.
And so I wrote my first paper with Dr. Warren there on CPM, and he calculated the statistics on his 11C Hewlett-Packard calculator.
Yep. The Voyager form factor.
Yeah. Brilliant. And then we published it. It was all great. Yep. And then eventually that led to the sponsorship travelling to the US. This is a tip. I'll tell you some secret stuff about the Nobel Prize.
Okay, yes, please do.
So,
just between us.
So in America, if you win a prize, you pay full tax on it. In Australia, it's tax exempt.
No, exactly, because it's a prize.
High five.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So out of kind of lucky for me, I had not yet won the Nobel Prize.
Right.
And come back to Australia, and then a few years later, someone said, Barry, do you realise that if you've still got a green card, the US government can tax you from your global income? Oh. God, I was like Julian Assange.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went in and I snipped up my green card and filled out this form and gave it back to the US Embassy, and they said, you're the only person we've ever heard of who handed in his green card.
Given up their green card.
There are other people.
That's great, yeah.
So anyway, so I started a business in Australia then, and I used to get these crazy bills from the US tax department. They're really just trying one on. So I got rid of the green card, and then when we won the Nobel Prize, of course, no tax.
Excellent, brilliant.
And those poor Americans, they would be like getting $500,000, like, $200,000 tax.
Is it how much is it?
It's 1.7. I think it's 1.7 million krona or something like that.
Yeah.
But effectively,
Swedish
it's $1 million US.
Right. Okay.
Something about that.
But you had to split it.
Yeah. So Dr. Warren and I,
half each.
800,000 each US, something like that.
Right.
And you invite all your relatives to Sweden. You all travel around as crazy bus tours and go to the opera and everything. Your family has a fabulous time because.
And there's a big black tie dinner, and
you meet the king and queen.
Queen of Sweden. Yeah, right.
And it's pretty difficult because you've got to shake hands with the king. Plus, he gives you the medal. So which hand do you shake with? That's a total stressful evening, I tell you.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
So, but
is that a Nobel pin?
Yeah. So this is your little tiny Nobel pin.
Oh, they give you that, do they?
Are you going to zoom in on that, Dave?
I'm going to zoom in on this.
I don't carry the Nobel Prize with me.
No.
So when I first saw it, I said, "How come it's got a picture of Dr. Warren on it?" And they said, "No, that's Alfred Nobel. They look similar."
Nice.
So if Dr. Warren watches this, I say, Robin Warren, here you go, Robin. I gave you a good mention. I'm not sure. I sometimes carry some Nobel Prize chocolates, but I don't. No, I haven't.
Chocolates.
I must remember to get them.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So I can't remember why we got off on a tangent, but anyway.
So it's the Nobel Prize of Physiology or Medicine.
Yeah.
They give it. What's the difference?
So well, that's what it was called. That's all. Physiology or medicine. In 1900, they weren't really sure of where one stopped and one started.
Okay.
So physiology means, you might study the blood pressure of a cat, or you might put different drugs on it. You might get the artery out of a rat, and put it in a little thing that measures how strong it is or something. That would be physiology. What causes blood pressure? Or what causes, your
physiological factors of the body.
Yeah. Physiology is like measurements. So this one would be, you've got cochlea.
Yes.
In Australia. So they would know all about the physiology of the ear. If you said, what's the resonant frequency of the eardrum? They'd tell you straight away because they've actually measured it.
Right.
So that's physiology. And or if I wanted to, Dave, if I wanted to train you how to keep your lab tidy,
right,
I would just feed you every time you tidied it up.
I got it, yes.
That would train you. That's physiology.
Yes, please.
And medicine is more like human.
Okay.
So in those days, they didn't really. Actually, Alfred Nobel probably had ulcers. He invented dynamite. That's another story.
He did. Yeah.
He was an incredibly rich tycoon, and he visited Australia selling dynamite to the gold mines and everything. And then, but he used to sell nitroglycerin. That was his first business, but it blew up.
His business blew up.
He used to try to convince people that it was safe, and people all over the world were buying it and then getting killed.
Brilliant.
And then one day, the factory in Stockholm blew up and killed his brother.
Oh,
so he said, maybe it's not safe after all. So he then mixed the nitroglycerin with some montmorillonite clay, which is sort of powdery clay that's in a lot of things. It's I can't remember what it's called, but it's just some kind of white clay, plus some oil and some sawdust or whatever. And he ended up making dynamite, which didn't blow up.
Right, because nitroglycerin is a liquid.
That's what's in dynamite.
It's a liquid, right? So it's kind of unstable. No.
So you get glycerin.
Right, I'm going to get demonetized. I'm going to get flagged. The video's going to get flagged.
You get glycerin, and you mix a certain amount of. You can look it up in Indian chemistry.
All right. Okay.
Mix it with sulfuric acid, and then you pour nitric acid into it, and the reaction happens. It likes to be at body temperature.
All right.
And as it reacts, it actually gets hotter. But once it's about 45 degrees centigrade, it's starting to become unstable.
Oh,
so in Sweden during the winter, you can make it, and you'd have your old thermometer in there, and it's only 42, and I put a bit more in. I'm in a bit of a hurry today, and it would heat up too much and blow up. Great. You see. So you can imagine what happened.
Yep.
So it might actually be the beginning of the Swedish tradition of everything being safe, like Volvo cars.
Oh, interesting.
So
yes,
in Sweden, it's safe.
Right.
No matter what it is, we make it safe.
Make it safe.
So maybe that was part of it. Anyway, so he gave his. So he always had gut aches, stomach ulcers. We don't know about stomach ulcers because the only way they could diagnose it is when you died. They did a post-mortem. Stomach ulcer, not stress after all. So. But the treatment before our discovery, the treatment of ulcers was the treatment for stress. Dave, you'll have to give up this EEVblog.
Oh, you're going to have to give it up.
Or your
the wife tells me this
all your 10 million subscribers, they're going to be broken-hearted.
Right.
But you've just got to give it up. You've got to retire.
Sounds
good. Just go and live on the beach and fix car radios or something like that.
I'm there.
Yeah. Anyway, so I met people like that who had a fabulous, interesting career, and they just retired at age 50 or something, and they still had ulcers.
Right.
Yeah. So this stress thing was just totally bogus. So the treatment would be they would tell you you're not allowed to eat any spicy food, not allowed to take fruit juice or citrus.
Okay.
You're not allowed to have fish and chips. You've got to have just boiled steamed mornay, crayfish mornay, snapper mornay, everything with a lot of cream in them. And that would be what you lived on. Yeah. And you could never drink white wine or red wine or anything, or too much beer. Your whole life was miserable.
And
you still had your ulcers probably.
Right.
So then, and what do you reckon you died from?
I don't know.
Atherosclerosis. You ate so much oily fat and everything.
Really?
Your cholesterol would be 10 times normal. Your blood would be full of lipids. And so poor Alfred Nobel eventually started getting angina, and he was, I don't know, he's about 80, I think, and he eventually died from a heart attack. And he had no friends because he was always cranky. Cranky old millionaire.
But he left it in the will, left his money
So
in the
he
will.
left the money to medical prizes. So we're going back. What are they? Yeah. So the answer is first Monday in October. Every year they announce the first Nobel Prize, which is medicine.
Okay, that's right.
So whatever the date is, it's usually about the 3rd of October, thereabouts. So that was my date. And then after the next morning they do physics. And after that, chemistry.
Right.
And then they do literature. And then they do Peace Prize.
Yes.
And that's the one that gets the publicity because that is actually...
it does.
That is announced because when Sweden separated from Norway about 100 years ago, they said to the Norwegians, you guys can do the Peace Prize. So that's announced in Norway.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right, so it's technically a separate thing.
Yeah,
so you don't get to meet the king of Sweden or...
Norway.
You meet the...
So the favourite ones is actually the Swedish ones.
Right.
The Norwegian one is usually, is it going to be Bob Geldof or is it somebody else, But someone said to me, what about Obama? Because there's no way that he could have got his application in on time by the rules and yet he still won the Peace Prize.
Yes, there was a lot of to do.
So I thought about it for a while and I said, well, the Peace Prize is usually pretty controversial. And when I look back through the people I know got the Peace Prize, like terrorists and different people, And when I look back along what I know about the Peace Prizes in the last 30 or 40 years, Obama was one of the best, definitely.
Oh, interesting. All right.
So I was right behind it.
All right.
But anyway,
Excellent.
So then there's another one that's called the Commerce Prize, which is the Bank of Sweden in honour of Nobel or something, but it's sort of a proxy one or something. And that comes on, and that's pretty interesting.
Got it. Where does the money come from these days? Because surely his money's run
No.
out.
So what he did, he left all his money for the Nobel Prizes, which was $60 million in today's money, I think.
Okay.
And he said so they spend the interest on the money on the prize each year and keep it going. So it's probably built up to hundreds of millions.
Oh, okay. So it's just the interest on the money was enough to keep it going.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, so $6 million a year.
Right.
Not
bad, true.
$5 million a year, something.
10%.
But the really good prizes, like the Nobel, the reason it's good is because they get top professors and scientific people, and authors and everything, all over the world, and all the previous Nobel Prize winners get a nomination slip each year in the mail.
Oh, so you can nominate someone.
So I told my mum...
Are they the only people who can nominate?
Well, like the vice chancellor of the University of Sydney. Right? And then Sir Gus Nossel from Walter and Eliza Hall Institute. He might have, but he might have had a mate on the committee.
Okay.
Somebody like that. So people of note who trusted people in science get a nomination form. And they all send them in. So they come in like votes.
Is it anonymous? So they don't know who's voting who's recommending who?
They know that, they know who it's from.
Oh, okay.
So you actually don't get a nomination certificate.
Right.
Even if you photocopy it, Dave, they'll tell that it's not real.
Okay.
I told my mum all those letters she wrote to the Nobel Prize, they probably just got shredded.
Yeah. I'm sure they get tons, right?
Yeah,
I'm
they
sure
do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like what happens in Las Vegas
stays in Las Vegas.
It's kind of like that. It's superstitious. When you think you might be a Nobel Prize winner, you can never mention the Nobel Prize. And if someone says, Barry, do you think you'll ever win the Nobel Prize? Don't say that. That would definitely jinx you.
So who were you up against?
So what happens is they get hundreds of votes, probably from these people, and so they get a short list.
Right.
So professors all over the world, a lot of respected people say this would be a good one for medicine.
Got it.
And then so nothing happens for years and years. And then finally probably someone on the Nobel Prize committee gets an ulcer.
Oh,
and they say, I'm trying out these antibiotics. Wow, that is great. So that's our suspicion,
of how it.
Anyway, so you
think it was nominated years before, and then.
So people used to sort of mention it in that superstitious way.
We say, got it. Okay.
Don't ever mention it. And so about 95, it started to be big in medicine, plus documentaries and things like that. Right. And the link with stomach cancer was important because in a lot of places like Japan and China, that was the most common cancer.
Oh,
like in China, even today, 300,000 people a year die from stomach cancer.
Wow.
Because of this germ.
Wow.
So it became pretty popular after about 95, 96, and I had a medical company, and there was all kinds of hype going on about it. And then soon after that, we figured out really good treatments for it, which became available in Australia about 1998, 99. And then all the doctors in Australia really embraced the whole thing at that point, and they went crazy. They just treated anyone who ever mentioned the word ulcer.
They just gave them. Are there any side effects if you don't have it and you take the?
All antibiotics. You could be allergic or something.
You could be.
And the stuff about your microbiome and all the good bacteria and things like that. So it can upset your guts in different ways.
Got it.
But usually it bounces back because if you lose, so I don't want people to stop taking antibiotics. If they need them, they're the best things ever. But they do kind of wipe out the gut bacteria temporarily usually. But in your family, you'll soon catch the germs back up of your partner, of the kids, of the any surface, just your old toothbrush. You've got those germs around in your environment. You can go out and take probiotics or eat dirt or whatever. Yeah. You could get them back, and so that's what we notice. But that's a hot new thing now.
Right.
So you wouldn't want to take antibiotics unless you had a reason for it.
The antibiotic thing nowadays, they're talking about bacteria, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Are we, because people aren't doing the full course? And
that's
is that
right.
How big a problem
so, is that? The treatment we give for H. pylori, Helicobacter. Helico means twisty bacteria. So it's like a corkscrew-shaped bacteria.
Oh, okay. It's physically shaped.
Pretty easy.
Right. You can see that under the microscope, can you?
Actually, if you type our bacteria, Google search images, Helicobacter, you get about 50 pages of brilliant pictures.
Oh, I'll include a photo.
And you can have, I actually came third or something in an animation. About 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I paid for it myself and got a graduate animation student out of Sydney who did it on a beach in Thailand. Another long story.
Yeah.
So if you get diagnosed as having it, so the doctor does a breath test or a blood test, or maybe you had the scope down and the gastroenterologist found it. You would take a treatment of antibiotics plus acid-lowering drugs.
Okay.
Acid blockers, so it's usually 3 drugs, triple therapy.
Why do you have to lower the acid level?
Well, antibiotics are designed to get into your lungs or your urine. That's or the sinuses.
Is that the distribution?
The pH.
Right. Oh, okay.
If you put antibiotics into acid, they don't work.
Right. Got it.
The bugs are there like,
Yep.
It's giving them the signs, if you like, towards the antibiotics. But if you get rid of all the acid out of the stomach, that's the key thing. Then ordinary antibiotics like amoxicillin start to work.
Got it.
And so we can cure you in 10 days.
Excellent.
10 to 14 days. It's an end of story. You just don't have it. Your ulcer's totally cured.
Fantastic.
And you would be very, very unlikely to have any long-term effects like stomach cancer or anything like that. So end of story. So all the GPs just wiped out all the H. pylori, Helicobacter and ulcers in Australia.
Fantastic.
And so now we don't worry about it.
Why are people still dying from ulcers then? If this is like they can just take an antibiotic
there's a lot of people in the world.
Yeah.
And it costs, the diagnosis and treatment probably costs $150 if you worked it all out. So that's a lot of money for people in India.
Developing nations, yeah.
So the things people are doing in developing nations is going to make a difference.
Right.
Like in India, they're cleaning up the water and they're giving
course.
everybody toilets. So
basic
when you've got the poo,
basic for us,
the water comes in there,
clean,
and the poo goes into it and goes out the other side. That's the
first
discovery that saved more millions of lives than anything.
It was, yes.
Actually, the invention of the flushing toilet, they say.
Yep.
And who was the inventor? What was his name?
They had it in Caesar. They had
Crap.
it in Rome.
Yeah. No, but the flushing
Crapper.
toilet is Mr. Crapper.
When Mr. Crapper was the flushing toilet. But
Suppose
flushing toilet in Rome. So
yeah,
not flushing, but stream
So the water
toilets.
used to come from the mountain,
That's
down
right.
the aqueduct,
Down the
and flow
aqueduct.
through the toilets
Yep.
and out the back.
I've sat on one. Yep.
I haven't actually been to that one.
Okay, yeah.
I was probably in the business class.
Right.
I don't know what happens down the back of the plane, actually, Dave.
Oh, boy. So,
anyway.
how did you find out about your Nobel Prize? Was it a shock? Did you know you were nominated?
So this is one of these funny stories. You're never allowed to mention it.
Right,
course,
okay.
So
now allowed to mention you've been nominated.
That's right. Once you won it, they can never take it back, even if you were lying.
Got it.
Dr. Warren, who's the pathologist, he retired, you see, and I was travelling around giving lectures and talking about my book and everything, you know, and I never used to see him very much, and so I said, look, Robin, look, why don't I pick you up on Nobel Prize night, and we'll go down the pub. And then we'll listen to the announcements. You know, you never know, we might win it.
It's live streamed. I've never watched the live stream.
Anyway, so so we didn't have live streaming. We had a Nokia 911 or something.
Right. So you're at the pub.
So I said to my wife, I'm going. So I started this, and I said afterwards we had a lot of fun reminiscing. And he usually gets a big pint of Guinness, black Guinness, and I just have an Emu Export. You know.
Right.
And our fish and chips there, and we go to the Swan Brewery pub. It's on the Swan River, and it's now just a pub, you know.
Okay.
Rich people live there, not me. And so we did that, and at the end of it, that was about the year 2000, because we thought I said, you know, I think it's building up. You know, someone said. I got invited to give a lecture this year in Sweden. You know,
oh, okay. That's a hint. Nudge. Yeah.
Anyway, but so anyway, they announced it. It wasn't us. So maybe we'll win it. So the following year, I did the same thing. Picked up Robin at 4:00, and the announcement of the Nobel Prize is at 5:30 p.m. in Perth. Yeah. So 4 p.m. I pick him up and take him to the brewery, and we'd sit down and chat on and have our fish and chips and Guinness and everything. So that year went by no Nobel Prize, and then the third year,
devastated,
and we didn't win it again. That was like 2002. And it was now 2 years since I'd given the lecture in Sweden,
right, you figured,
and we'd had a conference about it a couple of years before, and I was like, oh geez, and we missed the boat, you know. Yeah. They've gone on to something else, you know, something that I couldn't understand.
Right.
And so then. We were there at the pub, and I'd gone to the pub, and I said to my wife, come see Robin. We're going to the pub, and we'll listen to the announcement. And she says, oh, no, I'm too busy. I can't do it. I've got to prepare lunch or something.
And she's thinking, he's not going to win it.
But that was the lowest priority in her mind, and she was cooking cabbage or something. She's actually got more degrees than me, by the way, so I shouldn't say that she just cooks cabbage. Anyway, so I'm there, and then Robin Warren's phone rings at 5:00, and he says hello, and they says, hello, Dr. Warren. Is that Dr. Warren? I'm Hans Jornvals, the head secretary of the Karolinska Nobel Committee, and you and Dr. Marshall have won the Nobel Prize. You know, so it was the right timing. Everything.
How long before the announcement? Like half an hour before.
Half an hour before. Right. So he said, well, you know, he's pretty deadpan. He said, oh well, that's very nice, thank you. And they said, but we've got a problem. We're not allowed to announce it until we've spoken to you and Dr. Marshall.
Yeah.
And we can't find him anywhere. We've called his office. They don't know where he is. We called his home, and we called this and that, and he's not picking up his mobile. We don't know where he is. He said, oh, well, he's here with me. We're at the pub.
So Aussie.
And they say, he says, well, they said, let us speak to Dr. Marshall. He said, I'll hand the phone over. Yeah. So, Dr. Marshall, you've also won the Nobel Prize with Dr. Warren. And I said, oh, great. And so I hung up. So then I called my wife. I said, you got to come here to the pub. There's something special I want to tell you. And she says, "Oh no! Look, I've got the potatoes on or something." This is on. And
More
then,
important than potatoes.
so at that point, she looks down on the table, and there's my wallet, and she says, "That swine, he's just calling me because he's left his wallet." So she, "I'll get you for this." So, okay, I'll come. So then she came, and we told her. So it's pretty exciting then. But then the one thing when we got to Sweden, that Dr. Jornvals, the head of the Nobel Committee, he was very, very worried because the Nobel Prize is so secret.
Right.
They plan it all year, and they have this final vote like some hours before the announcement.
Oh,
right?
really? Just
and
hours
then,
before?
And then,
so
you know, it's like a not guilty or guilty kind of. The jury comes out.
Yeah.
And then, you know, somebody comes out, reads the announcement. The winner is blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And they actually have somebody prepare several websites in a couple of
in
days before.
anticipation,
So
like
they,
all of them, and then
so
they
have
switch
the
one.
short list, you know, and then they have like 10 votes around the table on the day.
Right.
They must have an uneven number, mustn't they? Otherwise they could get a tie.
Yes, they must.
Anyway,
yeah, there's got surely got a system
whatever
for
that is.
that.
Anyway, so he was really worried. He said, "Since the Nobel Prize is so secret, how come you and Dr. Warren were already down the pub celebrating and we hadn't told anybody?" Because everyone else, of course...
We're Australian, mate. That's where we're just down the pub all the time.
But seriously, they
thought,
scan that room. They don't want anyone listening to their discussions.
Right.
So there's only about
they actually get people to scan the room.
So the guy who does the
devices.
website, he's probably in the room.
Right.
And the committee. And then they come out and they switch on one of their little websites. There's a couple of pages about it.
Yep.
And it's done.
Wow.
So
there you go.
it's pretty exciting.
Awesome.
And luckily we were getting on the booze anyway. Yep. Those press weeds, they were pretty frightened about that.
Oh, that's terrific.
And so, so finally, the final thing is you have to give a speech at this fabulous dinner with maybe 1,500 people.
And you've got to thank your mum. And,
but you have to give a little speech. So I found out that Sir Macfarlane Burnet, one of the Australian Nobel Prize winners from Melbourne, famous, they invented like myxomatosis or something, plus they just... rabbit-killing virus.
Oh, okay.
One of those.
Okay.
But when they invented the rabbit myxomatosis and it started getting released in Victoria for the rabbits, people had a epidemic that summer of encephalitis.
Oh.
Murray Valley encephalitis or something, and a lot of people were coming down with it.
Was it linked, or was it that just a coincidence?
Everyone asked that question.
Yeah.
So Macfarlane Burnet and his two mates, names escape me right at the moment, drank the virus to prove that it was harmless to humans.
Right.
And he won the Nobel Prize, but not for that.
Right. For having the guts to
he discovered important white cells and immunity and things like that about vaccines. So there was the thing was just because, I mean, even though we're Australian, just because we've got this tradition of drinking our own bacteria, which is one of the things I did that was also famous.
Oh, okay.
We'll do another podcast one day.
Okay.
It's just got this tradition. It's not really a guarantee that you're going to win the Nobel Prize. I don't want all you Aussie doctors out there experimenting on yourselves. Yeah. So that was one thing, and then finally to make sure you're going to win the prize. This is what I recommend to all you young scientists: is work hard.
Yes. Keep
balance in your life.
Yep.
And just in case, always be kind to Swedish people.
Ah, yes, got it.
So that was the key.
Brilliant. So why do you think your idea got it? Because it overturned centuries of thinking?
Hundreds of years of dogma.
Right.
It turned that 120-page ulcer chapter in the medical books down to 6 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a germ, take antibiotics, end of story. 10% of the population in the Western world used to get an ulcer. So like you could have come down with an ulcer 40 years ago, and they would have told you it was stress, and you could have had surgery to cut out half your stomach so it didn't make too much acid.
People have surgery,
all that kind of stuff. You know, it was a life-changing disease. Yeah. You could have given up all this. You know, I mean, you might have had to sell your whole lab for like $20 on Gumtree.
Yeah, exactly. To pay for my ulcer, my dodgy ulcer treatment.
So it was actually very serious, and the acid blocking treatment people used to take, called Zantac and Tagamet, were the two big drugs. Right. They were like $5 billion drugs for the drug companies.
And that was wiped out?
Well, they were smarter. They figured out how to sell it anyway. You get it in the supermarket now.
Got it. Okay.
Everyone gets indigestion from acid.
Oh, okay. So it does something else now.
Yeah,
they just remarket it.
But so it'll keep your acid and your ulcer under control. But when you stop taking it, if you run out, a week later you get your ulcer back, and you could hemorrhage or something, you know.
Ooh,
so that was the thing.
nasty.
So that used to cost people in Australia about $5 a day. Your
watch. You got one of those newfangled watches. Jeez, I have one of those.
What's his name? Tim Cook watch.
Oh yeah, one of those Apple-y things.
And
one of those fruity flavoured ones.
Mine's supposed to take your ECG, but they haven't got enabled in Australia yet because it's not legal to do medical tests on yourself with your watch.
Really? Is that why?
Only in America so far.
Only in America. There you go. Only in America.
So, so we'll get into the ulcer story.
Yep.
10% of people in the Western world used to get ulcers, and about 50% of people on the earth had the bacteria and would sometimes get a vomiting attack. Some people say, I can't eat pizza, I can't eat drink red wine, that kind of stuff. So when we discovered this, it really benefited maybe ultimately a billion people.
Yeah.
So in China now, I visit China a lot. Half the people have got it if you average them out. But in Shanghai and those wealthy parts of China, it's like Australia, much less. You know, we will probably, through our Marshall Centres and treatment recommendations and things, we will probably indirectly influence about 100 million or 200 million Chinese people will take it.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So you'll find you'll find me in a couple of other YouTubes if you search talking about ulcers or something.
Excellent. I'll try and find them and link them in. Thank you very much, Barry.
And thank you for teaching me about electronics,
Excellent.
Dave. Sometimes I need something different.
We'd love to. We could spend the next 2 hours talking about vintage tech gear, and you've got
Where was that famous oscilloscope you said you've got?
I got a 2465B down there. The man knows his vintage
beautiful.
scopes.
That's like oscilloscope porn, as you would say.
And you're going to visit the Vintage Tech Museum soon?
Yeah, so it's in Boulder, Colorado, I think. So I've got a few connections there, and I have a couple of days conferencing in America. Mm-hmm. And if I could get a couple of days off at the end of it, I'll go somewhere nerdy like that.
Awesome.
Either there or NASA in the Space Center.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it should be fun.
I'm jealous. All right, thanks, Barry, for joining us. That's brilliant. Just
my pleasure.
Off the cuff, we thought we'd turn the camera on. Hope you liked it.
Yep.
Catch you
next time. I'll bring the medal.
Yes, please.
We should do that.
Yeah, awesome.
I need someone to drill a hole in it so I can we're hanging around my neck.
Yeah, gangster style. Yeah,
it should be good.
And does it open door? Like presumably it opens every door. Nobel Prize.
They say that you get in once.
Do you drop it? Oh, you get in once. Okay, but you're not invited back.
Out.
Brilliant.
So
but it does work.
It got me into the Shanghai World Fair.
Oh, okay.
And so we turned up at the pavilion there, the Aussie pavilion or the Chinese pavilion, and there was this big queue. The main queue was hundreds of people long. So we saw someone going around through this back door, and we came in and we said, "Can we get in there?" And they said, it was me and my mate Peter Hammond from Sydney, actually.
Yeah.
And we said, what's that door for? And they said, oh, that's the VIP door. Mm-hmm. And they said, have you got your VIP pass? And I said, oh, no, but I got my Nobel Prize medal there. Is that good enough?
You whipped out the medal.
And they like, tuck, tuck, tuck. Yep, you guys are in.
Well done.
Doesn't happen very often.
Brilliant.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Basil.
That's great. Yep.
Bazza. Yeah, no worries. We're in Australia.
Yeah. And I'm from Kalgoorlie years ago.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I went there.
Gold mine in
2
town.
days ago.
Pretty ironic, isn't it? That you know.
Yeah.
That you got the gold.
And they were all migrants there.
Yep.
And they all used to get ulcers.
Oh, not anymore.
Yeah. No,
awesome.
End of story.
All right. Thanks, Bazza.
Okay.
Catch you next time.